In my mind, of course. So this was the second sacred space. That was my mind. You know, I started chanting Hare Krishna, and then I thought I should chant Hare Krishna. I should not have any other impure thoughts. So this was I started slowly. My sacred space started expanding. So mind became a sacred space. I was chanting Hare Krishna in my mind. And then I thought, this room is actually terribly dirty. I should clean it up. You know. So I cleaned up everything. I put new tapete, wallpaper. At that time, tapete was very popular in the 80s. I don't know if you remember. And so my room suddenly became very clean. So my friends came, they were like shocked, highly surprised. What's going on with you? You know, something's very wrong with you. Your room is very clean, and you don't take intoxicants. You know, I did not participate in this, party events on Friday night anymore. I did, but not in a full time, full strength. So I thought, my sacred space expanded. Meaning, in this particular room where I stayed, this was it. I did not engage in any of these activities. I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I was chanting there. So this particular, 5 by 3 became the sacred space with certain rules in it. And this is how I lived for some time. Then I found out that there's a temple. So I went to the temple. There was an amazing thing, a big house, very similar to this. And the temple was much bigger, much more devotees. And there was an altar. In the morning they opened altar, and all these wonderful smells come out, incense. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is the real sacred space. So my sacred space started expanding somehow through space. Although I have it in my drawer in my room, this also through unseen cords expanded to the big temple. So every time I went to this temple, in this temple, the devotees strictly followed the principles, the devotees chanted Hare Krishna, the devotees did particular service to Krishna. So this was a very spiritual place for me every time I went. Of course I went only 2 times and I joined immediately, but I went and I thought, wow, this is an amazing spiritual place. And then the devotees said, after like 7 days I was in the temple, they said, we distribute books here in this temple. You should also go out to book distribution. That's 7 days, I know book distribution. I said, what is book distribution? I said, you take these books and you go to door, knock at people's door, and if they open, you tell them, buy this book, it's very good. I said, yes, but I don't know what is inside. He said, don't worry about it. It's a very spiritual book, and you can even read it. So I read the book. There was perfect questions, perfect answers. And I did. Of course, there was different techniques which they told me, which nowadays we try not to imitate. And the technique was when somebody opened the door, you put the foot so they cannot close the door. It was a very special technique. So I said, okay. So I did this. I did first day 5 books, and I was very proud, of course. And then the devotees told me, this is the safest place in the material universe to stay in the street and distribute books. Wow. So my sacred space expanded suddenly. It's on the streets. And to this huge building going door to door, putting foot so the people can close the door. Somehow this became the sacred space. So sacred space expanded. And due to the various circumstances at that time, particularly the unfortunate civil war happened, and I was drafted, and I had to leave the country. And I went to I was fleeing the country. I went to India. So I found that actually the whole whole city can be a sacred space, Vrindavan. So I lived in Vrindavan, and as Vrindavan was a city with 5,000 temples. Everybody was worshipping Krishna. And all these pastimes where Krishna actually walked. Krishna was stepping on this very land which I was stepping. This was an amazing thing. Vrindavan is the most amazing place in the universe. Actually, it is a spiritual world which is actually visible somehow to us when we worship Krishna. So the sacred space expanded into a big village called Vrindavan, and I found out later. Mayapur and so on and so forth, the different temples of ISKCON. So this sacred space from the small, drawer expanded into all kinds of things. Suddenly, the sacred space was a big place for me, not anymore just some piece. And then the more I practice Krishna consciousness, the more I was reading. I remember once I started reading Bhagavad Gita, and I was thinking, I want to apply this Bhagavad Gita in my life. I don't want only to be a book for me, because books are also sacred spaces. So I wanted to read. I was reading Bhagavad Gita, and I came to this verse, and this verse really struck me. And this is a not famous verse, but Sarvata Panipadam Tat, Sarvatokshi Shiromukam, Sarvata Shrutima Loke, Sarvam Avritya Tishtati. This is in 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It says, everywhere are his hands, means Krishna's, and legs. So Krishna's hands and legs are everywhere. And his eyes and faces, and his ears, and he hears everything. In this way, the super soul exists, is the translation. In the word for word, Prabhupada translates, Sarvam Avritya Tishtati. Sarva means everywhere, Avritya means covering. Meaning he covers everything in this material world. So then I finally understood, wow, Krishna is actually everywhere. So my sacred space became the whole world. Because everywhere you go, everywhere you step, there's Krishna. Sarvata Panipadantat Saratokshi Shiromukam. His face is everywhere. Krishna sees everything, and Krishna knows everything. I could not hide anymore. Sometimes the world thinks, okay, and then nobody watching, lock the door, and I can now be myself. No, Krishna is actually even behind the door. Krishna is actually at the door itself. Once I had one bhakta, he was very philosophically challenging all the time. He had this Mayavadi concept. He said, how do you know that I did not create you? I said, I'm sure. I know my mother, father. You did not, you're not my father and mother. I know who created you. Anyway, so he had these ideas. And then he became dissatisfied with this personal philosophy, and he said, I'm leaving the movement, I'm leaving the Hare Krishna temple. And I said, I cannot stop you, this is a voluntary movement, you can do whatever you like. And he said, I'm going to the places where there is no Krishna. And I said, well, I started laughing. I said, this is not possible. How can you go to the places where there is no Krishna? Sarvata Panipadam Sarvata Kshishiram Sarvata Shrutima Loke. Krishna's Sarvam Avritya Tishtati. He covers everywhere. And he said everyone's heart. And even more so, in the Brahma Samhita, there's a famous line which says, Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. The Krishna, he enters every atom, even every atom. So even this, even if you step on anywhere, this is Krishna. And even your foot is made of the atoms, which is actually Krishna. And he was like, okay, maybe I'll stay. He actually stayed and received initiation and everything for some time. But the point was this, that our sacred space expands to the whole world, because actually sacred space is sacred as much as our understanding of Krishna is. So in the beginning, my small understanding was that I should not read the Bhagavatam in the toilet. So this was my understanding of Krishna consciousness. But as I progressed more in the knowledge, meaning not that I personally progressed, but the point is that I gathered more knowledge, simply, as Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and by practicing, you actually understand much more things. It is explained. You understand that this whole world is nothing but Krishna. When Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, was leaving his body, his physical form, sadhaka body in Vrindavan, he was laying in the last moment of his life, and he said these very famous words, everything moving and non-moving is nothing but Krishna. Non-moving also, not only moving, non-moving. And this consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. And this is a very deep and subject matter. We read the other day the story of Rahugana, Maharaja Rahugana, and Jada Bharat in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, where Jada Bharat explained to Maharaja Rahugana, you think you're the king, and you think I'm your subject, or you think this is a palanquin. But actually, these are just different arrangements of the material elements. And Maharaj Yuga was shocked. How is this possible? You know, we think somehow that we are kings. We think that we are a person, I am working, or I am depressed, or I'm happy, or I live in Zurich, or I live whatever, I'm from Sri Lanka, whatever your story or my story is. But in reality, this is just a rearrangement of the material elements, philosophically looking. At the same time, Maharaj Jadabara told Maharaj Shugana, at the same time, although this is true, at the same time you are creating pain to these people who carry you, and he chastising them. So this is a very interesting paradox, you can say. In one sense, we understand we are the material elements, the body at least is a material element, as according to the Bhagavad Gita. But at the same time, these material elements can create pain and actually harm other material elements. This is an interesting concept. And that's why Krishna consciousness is a little more difficult to understand, because it's a little more philosophical. But once we understand this, because it's an intricate thing. Material world is a very intricate thing. What to speak of the spiritual world. So therefore we accept, I at least accepted Krishna consciousness for that very reason, because there's a depth to it, depth to this knowledge. Not that, you know, I think now this religion is better than your religion, or I'm better than you. I think this knowledge is very superior knowledge, and therefore I accept it. Therefore I speak this knowledge because I think it's great. And I think everybody should hear it. This is what we heard today. It's a supposedly more goodness. You know. So this sacred space somehow actually always exists. We just don't understand what sacred space is. You know. So this was my realization. That I think I create sacred space, but actually everything is already sacred. Because Krishna's material energy is part of his divine energy, Daivi Prakriti. This is a divine energy of Krishna. Another interesting point is here, this is now becoming a little more intricate and more interesting. Okay, I understand this whole universe is Krishna's energy, everything is Krishna, everything is Krishna's energy. But then, worshipping Lord Krishna's lotus feet is also a sacred space. So, Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is described as Tirthapad, Srila Prabhupada says in one purport. Tirtha means sanctified place, and Pada means the lotus feet of the Lord. So the lotus feet of the Lord is also a sanctified place, is actually a sacred place. And Srila Prabhupada says, what does it mean, Tirthapad? What does it mean that devotees, approaching lotus feet of Krishna? That means the devotee accepts the devotee is a servant of Krishna and offers service to the lotus feet of Krishna. So therefore, the service to the Lord is actually a sacred space itself. So we are now, you can say, getting out of the material whole universe and everything, and the sacred space becomes the actual service to Krishna, because the lotus feet of Krishna are purifying everything. So this is the, you can say, further expansion of the sacred space. Interestingly, today I actually gave Tamil class also, and one devotee after the class, he asked me, because I was speaking about Lord Balaram was sent by Krishna to go to Vrindavan and how he treated the gopis, how he tried to console the gopis. And after the class, this devotee asked me, did you ever meet a devotee who actually reminds you on Krishna? Not a devotee, but when you met this devotee, you immediately kind of like felt the presence of Krishna. And I said, yes, actually just recently we came from one place and we met, I met a devotee who actually, I felt that he carries Krishna. Not that he still carries Krishna on his back, but he actually carries Krishna in his heart. So this is the last, you can say, point I wanted to say. The devotee himself has so much faith and so much absorption in Krishna that a person becomes a sacred space himself or herself. This is like an end of this amazing journey from of course I didn't speak of the spiritual world also, This is another completely different story. But I'm speaking about at least this, living in the material world. That devotee becomes tirtha kurvanti tirtan. That devotee becomes actually a place of pilgrimage. A devotee, a person. Imagine. But everybody can become, not just, special devotee from the airplane, golden airplane arrives, but actually everybody, whoever is Prabhupada says here, such a pure devotee who has implicit faith in the lotus feet of the Lord, can create sacred places in any part of the world, wherever he remains. This is something amazing. Each devotee of us can actually, if you have implicit faith in Krishna, can actually become a sacred space ourselves. This is a Wahnsinn, as they say. I don't know if Dutch. But the Prabhupada, for example, he came to this most terrible, filthy Second Avenue at that time of New York. Whoever has been to New York, you know this area. Now it's a little bit better, but B Avenue, for example, now is kind of the same as it was that time, Second Avenue. Not the best place. And Prabhupada created sacred place in this storefront, Imagine. Now we glorifying Second Avenue, matchless gift, but this is just a regular dirty storefront. And Srila Prabhupada created a sacred space there because he was himself a sacred space. When Srila Prabhupada was in the beginning, he would, because they were very poor, the devotees were poor, Prabhupada was very poor in the very beginning in the 60s, it is described that Prabhupada would take one apple and cut in many pieces, and he would eat one and he would give the rest. Because he understood, I am the, you can say, carrier of Krishna for them, and therefore if they eat my maha, they will make progress. It's in one sense, it sounds not humble, but in the other sense, it's very humble. Actually, that you, although you know that you are just a servant to Krishna, for the service of Krishna, he did also this amazing thing. Prabhupada says here, the place sanctified due to the presence of a pure devotee, any place automatically becomes a place of pilgrimage. If the pure devotee resides, it becomes a place of pilgrimage. So therefore, this temple here is a place of pilgrimage. It's amazing. House which was 50 years ago, some other people are living here. Now suddenly this is a place of pilgrimage. They have all these people come in, bringing whatever fruit, offering gifts to the Lord, because these places become place of pilgrimage. Prabhupada says, in other words, such a pure devotee who is engaged in 100% in the service of the Lord can remain anywhere in the universe, and the part of that universe immediately becomes a sacred place where he can peacefully render service to the Lord as the Lord desires. Such pure devotee is able to rectify the polluted atmosphere of any place. So this is how the sacred space, you can say, evolves. From the beginning of some little things to more, to expanding, and in the end that you yourself, as Srila Prabhupada and other pure devotees, actually become a tirtha kurvanti tirtha, sacred places themselves. So we should try to understand this and try to understand what kind of actually weight every spiritual aspirant, you can say, in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has to actually become a carrier of Krishna. We carry Krishna all over the world. We distribute books, we distribute prasadam, somebody take, oh, you like this sweet? Yeah, sure, And people just eat one sweet, and this is like a beginning of their spiritual life. So this is what I wanted to say about sacred spaces today. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. If you would have any possible question.
Thanks a lot, Prabhu, for the wonderful talk. I just have I don't know whether it's a silly question. You said that you read Bhagavatam initial stages, like during your initial stage.
Yes.
Which chapter actually inspired you to read once again, and what has motivated you to read again and again?
Thank you. I do not remember exactly chapters. I just remember the teaching of the Lord Kapila was very, in general, about devotional service was very impressive. But the most impressive was Varahadev. Varahadev was very impressive to me. The board incarnation, wow, I liked it so much. The conversation between Varahadev and Hiranyaksha, that they offend each other. When Hiranyaksha said, "You amphibious beast," and Varahadev said, "We, the forest animals, kill dogs like you." And how Varahadev, he was in his hoofs. Varahadev, in the beginning, they were fighting with clubs. Hiranyaksha and Varahadev, they were fighting with clubs. So Varahadev hit the club of Hiranyaksha and he dropped, because it was very strong. So his club fell off. And Varahadev did not, now to kill you, Varahadev actually respected. He said, "Oh, he dropped the club also." So he said, "Oh, let's fight like men," although Varahadev was a boar. So they were fighting fist to fist, Varahadev with his hoofs. And so Varahadev, on the end, he hit him here with the ear. This is everybody who knows a little bit of martial art. I'm not an expert, but this is a 100% sure knockout here. Under the ear is like 100% knockout. So Varahadev with his hoof hit him here and he died. And I thought, wow, this is so, I read this over and over again. So this was very inspiring to me that the Lord can assume such a wonderful form as Varahadev. And the second of all, really the philosophy, the Sankhya philosophy of Kapila Dev was very attractive to me. I didn't understand, of course, anything, probably. But it was for me, devotional service is explaining the importance of devotional service, the aspects of devotional service. I liked it very much. So these two things were most impressive to me. And the books I got was completely accidental. I did not buy them. A friend of mine, he said, my mother bought 2 books. There was, I think, 2 or 3, I'm not sure if it's third canto, but which parts, I think. And he said, I have these books, I tried to read them, they're very boring, and there's some names, and I don't understand, but you like to read these weird books, yes, please. And I started reading, that's how I get in touch. I did not read Bhagavad Gita, so I think I joined by the grace of Varahadev. Anything else? Yes?
Thank you so much. Lesson was very inspiring talk, as always, and I'm always very inspired by lectures. I have a question. You mentioned that this space is all sacred, as long as we are aware of it, as long as we understand it, as long as we are Krishna conscious. So
yes.
The question is, how can I stay always aware that this is a sacred space, and how can I always stay Krishna conscious, even in challenging situations where Maya is so powerful?
Today, I don't know, today or yesterday was a Verschijningstag, can you say Verschijningstag? Disappearance Day of Vamshidas Babaji. And Vamshidas, I read this book of Bhakti Vikas Maharaj many, many times, and this is so inspiring to me. The Vamshidas Babaji was actually completely, he was the personification of the sacred space. Everything was sacred for him. When Vamshidas Babaji would see the train coming, at that time the Indian trains with this, the steam coming, he said, "Oh, Agasura is coming." He would see the pastimes of Krishna. Or they would walk by the telephone lines, He said, "Do these lines lead to Govardhan?" So he would see Krishna everywhere. Or a goat would eat some grass, and he was like, "No, you eating tulsi." So they were asking, "There's no goat, tulsi. There's no tulsi. Goat is here." He said, "No, this goat is eating tulsi in the Radha Raman temple." So the devotees went to the phone at that time. They called Radha Raman temple and says, "Yeah, goat today ate tulsi." So he was very absorbed, constantly absorbed in Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. He did not know he was accidentally in this material world. So this is the goal, you can say, at the end of our lives. But in between, before we do this is the highest stage, Uttamadhikari. But our movement is the movement of Madhyama Adhikaris, not Kanishta Adhikaris, but Madhyama Adhikaris. So we have to just behave like Madhyama Adhikaris. Madhyama Adhikaris means intermediate devotees. Intermediate devotees knows who are the devotees, who are the envious, who are the innocent, and he avoids the envious, he helps the innocent, and he's making friends with devotees. And this is the Madhyama Adhikari. And how to be always Krishna conscious is, I heard this long time ago, very good advice. Purijan Prabhu was saying that because he gave all this, he started basically Bhakti Shastri, the whole educational thing in Vrindavan. And he, he wrote Bhagavad Gita, I don't know commentary, but how do you call it? Study guide, and Bhagavatam also study guide. And, he went very section by section. And he said, there was some years after, and he said, now when I read Bhagavatam, I'm just sitting back and I'm waiting for Bhagavatam to tell me, to instruct me. He wants to hear what Bhagavatam has to tell him. So when I really try to apply this. You read something and you think, wow, how can I apply this in my life? How can I actually apply this in my life? The first thing I tried was I took all the 11 chapter of Bhagavatam and 10 chapter of Bhagavatam. What Krishna says, of months I am this, of animals I am this, of the mountains I am this. So I wrote down all the list, what Krishna is, and I just tried to remember this. And I said, wow, Krishna is actually this, of all the waters on the ocean. Oh, then you go to the ocean, you say, this is Krishna. Whatever, of the animal, water animals are the shark. When you see shark, or you hear, oh, this is Krishna. So like this, everything that reminds you of Krishna. This is an artificial means, but this is we are Madhyama Adhikaris, practitioners of sadhana bhakti. So we try to do this. We try to remember Krishna in these artificial ways. And artificial ways means, as we said earlier, by force. We try to remember Krishna. By reading, if you read 10 hours a day, you cannot think about something else, really. If you really read 10 hours a day, you cannot think about anything related to Krishna. This is a fact. So the more you apply, in anything else, as I was saying the other day, if you sit on a computer 10 hours, then you close your eyes, you see just divine light. That's all you can see. The computer, divine light. But if you read, imagine you read 10 hours, pastimes of Krishna, what can you remember? You remember, Krishna was tightening his belt and he jumped into the water, and you see the water, you remember, this is Krishna. As I was saying, humorous example this morning, when one devotee joined the Hare Krishna movement, and he saw beautiful Gauri Thai, and Gauri Thai had beautiful black hair, and he said, when I saw the black hair, I was thinking, wow, my girlfriend has exactly the same black hair. This was his smarana. But should be the other way around. When we see a beautiful girl with black hair, we say, Krishna, she has a curly hair. We say, Krishna has such beautiful curly hair. It should be actually the other way around. But this was his smarana. So we try to, it's like there's a program, computer program called Garbage In, Garbage Out. This is a famous, everybody knows this. Anybody, IT people, whatever you put in computer, this will come, it cannot come out anything else. If you put garbage, so in the same way, if you put garbage in our mind, then the garbage will come out. And we have a garbage for millions and millions of lives, this chipped consciousness, which is impressions from millions of lives. Sometimes we chant and we have the altar and we somehow come something horrible thought, and we say, where is this coming from? But this is from these previous lives, previous sinful activities. So we try to, this is the whole point of sadhana bhakti, to actually impress on the mind. To impress on the mind Krishna consciousness, so that it becomes natural. Because it is natural. You just have to do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Any other sportsman or any job, if you want to be successful, you have to watch these moves, you have to watch, if you're a boxer, watching the moves, the whole games and this and that. So and then it become automatic, you don't need to think about it, just automatically. So like this. Sadhana bhakti, this is sadhana bhakti. Garbage, not garbage, Krishna in, Krishna out. Hare Krishna. Anything else?
So extending to Mataji's question.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would. Yeah. So extending to Mataji's question. Yeah. So how means what is that practice? And is it because you have an experience of Krishna consciousness that you are living in Krishna consciousness
Yes.
so many years? So what is that one practice do you advise us that we should follow it before we go to sleep? Because that is the time where, you know, it is like we go into the subconscious, and so what is that one practice that we do and we, I guess, maybe we are elevated towards Krishna consciousness? No?
You know, of course, we have a Shravanam Kirtana Vishnu Smaranam. Chanting, of course, is very important. But everything is actually very important. But chanting is very important in the morning, particularly. But in the evening, my, you can say, suggestion, experience is reading Krishna book, pastimes of Krishna, not heavy philosophy. Unless you are a heavy philosopher yourself, then you feel challenged to read at 9 o'clock in the evening some Sankhya philosophy, material elements, and I don't think anybody can do this, unless you are very, strong and whatever. Usually the pastimes of Krishna. Krishna, put hand in the mouth of Keshi demon and become hotter out, and you think like, wow, this is so amazing. How Krishna has done this. Although you've heard it hundreds of times, you still think like, wow, how can you do this? So something like this, Krishna's pastimes in the evening. Prabhupada actually recommended reading Krishna book in the evening and drinking hot milk, and then you will dream of Krishna. This is a Prabhupada's formula. So we try to somehow do this. In temples, usually. You read Krishna book.
But if you are not fond of reading books, then what?
Listen, there's a YouTube everywhere. Everybody has a YouTube nowadays. Internet connection. There's I can even tell you, Amala Bhaktadas, Krishna book. Whole Krishna book, and very dramatically narrated. It's so ecstatic, you're listening all the time. And then there's music, and then Krishna got his belt and jumped into the water. And when you listen to this, you think, well, I'm there, I'm next to it, I'm watching it. So listen, YouTube Ki Jai. By the mercy of YouTube, we have all kinds of wonderful things. Lectures, this, and Krishna stories, everything.
There's also wonderful reading from Srimad Bhagavatam by the devotees in Vrindavan that complete the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's
Yeah,
very nice.
all kinds of great things. Yeah.
And
YouTube.
it's really files you can download.
Everything is there. Is that satisfying to you?
Absolutely. And
Reading in the evening.
Yeah, yes.
Because it's also good to hear Prabhupada's word, what Prabhupada said also. Anything else? So, thank you very much for your attention, for your kindness, and now we will be going to the next stage, which will be announced.
Jaya Sacinandana Prabhu ki
Jai.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu, for the lecture. Just a few announcements before we take prasadam. There will be